no one in the police for 13 years knew what I went through. So even when I was working in like domestic violence and child abuse, I didn't think at the time, this is a superpower. This is something that could really help change things. I thought I need to keep my mouth shut.
Today I'm joined by Paul McAnulty, CEO of Rebuild East Midlands, an organisation focused on restoring hope and rebuilding futures.
We have a principle where we don't ask a survivor about their past. We don't ask them about their exploitation, we ask them about their future. Once you know about it, it's really hard not to want to do something to abolish it once and for all.
What makes Paul's story so powerful is that his leadership doesn't come from theory, it comes from lived experience. From facing some of life's toughest challenges to now leading and supporting others through theirs.
I take real offence to that sentence because I think they are underserved communities, they're misrepresented communities.
Is that our fault?
Yeah, it's our fault. Yeah. You can't, it's so victim blaming. You know, you're from a hard to reach community, therefore you haven't accessed our support. You are in a position where you can share your skills and knowledge and resources to genuinely make a positive impact in your local community, and that's really powerful.
Welcome back to Beyond the Numbers. I'm Bev Wakefield, and this is the podcast where we break down the numbers in a way that actually makes sense and helps you build a business that serves your life and not the other way around. Paul, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'd absolutely love you to start perhaps with your story. Like, take us back. How have you got here?
It's been a bit of a ride, yeah. I don't know. I could probably do like a really whistle-stop tour. Yeah. I was once accused of like oversharing, but doing it in a way that doesn't go too deep. But like chronologically, I grew up in Stoke-on-Trent, and in an environment of quite severe domestic violence and child abuse. And then at the age of 12, that kind of morphed into me being put to work. So my dad found me work for £2 an hour washing caravans, and then he used to take all that money, spend it, and I wouldn't see a penny of it. And I didn't really, identify that as exploitation at the time. It was just another sucky part of that childhood. But left that job at 17 thinking, because my mum went into a refuge for survivors of domestic violence, and I thought, right, to spite him, I'm going to quit my job, because it's one of these, like, when you understand trauma and how it affects people, agency is important. And even doing things that, when you look back on them, are actually quite self-destructive and silly, it still feels like you're taking control of your own life. So that resulted in me being made homeless. So I was a rough sleeper for around 6 months at the age of 17. And that was when I moved to Derby. But since then, luckily through a friend, managed to find a way off the streets. Got my first grown-up job in the domestic violence unit for Derbyshire Police. Then moved into child abuse, which was obviously super rewarding. And then, from then on, I moved into what they call a serious organised crime unit, which is a special ops unit, which covers the whole East Midlands. And we took on mainly drugs, firearms, murders, that kind of stuff. Took on a modern slavery investigation, which didn't particularly go well in terms of criminal justice outcomes, but introduced me to this abhorrent crime, which since then I've spent about 16 years making it my purpose. It's just something that once you know about it, it's really hard not to want to do something to abolish it once and for all. So since then I've spent years working in the charity sector, I've worked in the corporate sector, all with a lens to, tackling exploitation in its different forms and stuff. But right now at Rebuild, it's the happiest I've been in my career. It's amazing. I just have a pinch me moment when we were collecting an award just before Christmas. We won Enterprising Charity of the Year award, and I had a bit of a cry. But it's just one of those like weirder moments that you can't ever imagine the trajectory that your life will take. And there's a lot to be grateful for at the moment. So.
Now, I was lucky enough to chat with you not that long ago, and we discussed this, and I'm still getting goosebumps, even though you're kind of doing the summary version of it now. And I think moving from that, though, is in taking something so difficult and driving that as your purpose. And you can clearly see how you've done that throughout all of your career, from that first role that you took. And I know you said that actually it might have been a little bit it was perhaps the wrong route to go and you thought you were taking control, but that was an incredibly brave moment to take as that 17-year-old. Even then, what would you say to yourself now as that 17-year-old?
It's hard, isn't it? Because this is what we work with survivors who, understanding complex trauma, it teaches you not to judge. Hindsight is always going to be 20/20. When you make a decision that you can later look back on and go, oh, maybe I should have done the other thing. I think what it's instilled is that it sounds really sort of, I don't know, conceptual, but I believe that everyone is exactly where they're meant to be.
Yeah.
And I believe I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, because I think at any given point in your life, you've got the information that you've got available and you make what you think is the right decision. So it is the right decision. It doesn't matter what comes 10 years down the line, looking back on it and going, yeah, that was stupid. There's no point in doing that, because it's counterfactual and it's just holding you in your past. But, if I could say anything to that, I think he did great at 17-year-old, and you can't, it's hard because I've got two brothers who were left behind and had to stay with my dad. And I think there's an assumption there that they probably think I had it easy, because they don't know about the rough sleeping. I've not told them, and I don't really want to expose them to that. Whereas it's easy for me to assume that they had it easier for me as well. So there's like a sense of like resentment that could grow from that. So I just think it's important just to like avoid that kind of counterfactual what if kind of thinking, and just accept that we're all exactly where we're supposed to be.
There's something quite stoic about that, isn't there?
I mean, Grandad was a stoic.
There we go. So maybe that's where it comes through.
My Grandad used to read like Marcus Aurelius and things like that. So and a lot of Rudyard Kipling and stuff. So that's probably rubbed off, but not in like I think stoicism's kind of been rebranded lately, and I think it's bordering on like just raw dog your way through horrible trauma and just and that's not what it's about for me. For me, it's more about if you can find peace, contentment, and happiness with what you have now. None of the comparative stuff, none of the conditional stuff can really get to you, because you're happy and fulfilled, and then everything else is like this juicy bonus, as opposed to constantly chasing something or comparing yourself to others and stuff.
And there is that bit of perspective, though, isn't there? And I think sometimes it's a really difficult thing to go, actually, someone's been through all of this. How can you have kind of a positive outlook now? And maybe that's because you're now driven by that deep purpose to help.
I think so, and I think therapy helped.
Yeah, of course.
Which one of the amazing avenues of support that we provide at Rebuild is trauma-informed coaching, and I'm a huge. I think anyone who's ever tried therapy in their own personal life would be a huge advocate of it for anyone else. Looking after our team's important, so we give them access to things like clinical supervision. But I think that has definitely helped. I think like there's certain points of reflection in your life where you can't you're human, aren't you? I remember my first day I managed to get into the University of Derby, but I didn't graduate. I dropped out to take the job in the police. But I remember the first day in halls of residence, people being dropped off by loving families, pots, pans, duvets, and the resentment was. I was 17 at the time, so the resentment was really deep. But I don't have any of that, and I think like it doesn't come until like in my 30s when I finally decided to do therapy. That I kind of let go of all of that and just started trying to figure out who I want to be, what I want out of my own life, and what that looks like. Because I think trauma like that can take you down a path of like just minimizing yourself and people pleasing, and then your bar for like what makes you happy is so low that you will tolerate quite a lot of things, even from like personal relationships, romantic relationships, family, colleagues, jobs. You'll just settle for less. And I think there was an element of that for a long time until I managed to do therapy. But I think that's probably where some of like the more introverted or introspective stuff comes from now. But yeah,
so that was quite a turning point.
Yeah, it was after my little boy was born.
Oh.
I think it was just one of those life-changing moments where you're not just living for yourself anymore. There's people watching, and you're having to model decent coping mechanisms and behaviours. And I think if you realise that some of your coping mechanisms are just not sustainable, you can't take a young person through that. So you have to you're accountable, aren't you? So you kind of try and get a grip on yourself and try and live a good life, I guess. But yeah, or set a good example. I don't know. It sounds really self-righteous, but
no.
he basically saved me from just what could have been quite a harmful life less lived. Quite a less full and meaningful existence, I guess. So yeah, he did. He saved me.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you've experienced, obviously, a way that changes perspective. You've also worked in large organisations like ASDA. So tell me, I guess, about the challenges, the exciting bit about being able to have that kind of impact, perhaps.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
So I think when I first found out about exploitation, I was looking at it from the lens of like law enforcement.
Yes.
And the lens there is, okay, perpetrator accountability is everything. So how do we stop these people from harming more people? And I didn't realise this at the time, but all the pressure was being put on survivors. So you have to give a witness statement, you have to support a prosecution. And we weren't even looking after their most basic of needs. So when prosecutions fell down, there was a lot of like victim blaming narrative which is what led me to leave the police.
Okay.
After 13 years in that job, I loved it, and but I'd come from a public protection background where we were looking after survivors as opposed to chasing down baddies. And when I moved into the charity sector, it was returning to that. It was how do we give these people the tools so that they can actually do the work and they can move forward to a preferred future. We're not doing anything for people; we're doing it with them, and get them to take agency over their futures. And that was a really powerful moment. But I started to realise, there's a quote from Desmond Tutu. I'm not a religious person, but there was this great quote from Desmond Tutu that said, you can't just keep pulling people out of a river without asking them how they fell in the first place.
Yeah, sure.
So I was like, okay, so I've had a crack at arresting my way out of this problem.
Yeah.
I've had a crack at supporting my way out of this problem. I've never really had a crack at like what actual prevention looks like. We talk about it in our sector, but I think we talk about awareness. So if you give someone a poster and tell them what exploitation looks like, we think we're preventing it, and I don't think we are. I think without access to viable alternatives to pathways into exploitation, people are always still going to be at risk, no matter how many leaflets you give them. If they don't have other options, it's bad work or no work. So I kind of went into the corporate space thinking, okay, these guys actually have huge global supply chains, billions of pounds worth of leverage and procurement like reach.
Yeah.
And you can really, if you get it right at that top of the supply chain, you can really push a better quality of life down through the different tiers of supply chain to all of your suppliers, and hopefully get all the way down to the bottom of that chain. The people manufacturing this stuff, often overseas, sometimes not, British growers and straw, agriculture and farming, but really trying to improve the lives of everyone that business touches globally. And it was tough because it was the furthest away I've ever been from like the immediate and direct impact of supporting people. But it was another angle to look at a social issue from, to say, well, if we do get this right, we can have a positive impact and create viable and decent and responsible work for people and safe work for people, as opposed to pathways into exploitation. But I think there's a lot to unpick around like how much leverage do you actually have, especially when it comes to certain supply chains and where there's like the state imposed forced labor in certain countries where you just don't have the political power or the leverage to be able to sway that. But I think en masse, if more organisations join the movement, it would just become the baseline. So ethical business would become the baseline, and then unethical businesses couldn't undercut them.
Yeah.
So there'd be like a commercial argument. There'd be no more like commercial advantage to just being unethical, because that would be the baseline. So it's the journey we're going on at the moment. So I've come back to the charity sector.
Yeah, back to Derby.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, but hopefully applying some of that global knowledge to help businesses in our region to implement processes that do just that just give people fair and equal access to good work and good opportunities.
So tell me a little bit then about what Rebuild does as well, like what rebuilding lives.
Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do it justice, but basically they were founded about 8 years ago by an amazing woman called Leslie Gladwell. She's been their CEO for the entirety. And she made the really brave decision last year to move on, and they wanted to bring in a new CEO. And I think the idea was, what we've done to get this far isn't going to get us any further, and we probably need fresh perspective to kind of take us to that next level. But they're just incredible. The team are amazing. So what we do can kind of like be broken down into different categories. So we provide really complex long-term advocacy for people. So we support them with a whole raft of needs and outcomes. So if you understand things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so you look after their immediate well-being needs, physiological needs, and you slowly try to get them to this point of like esteem and self-actualization where they can just autonomously just move forward with their own lives. I think the best moment for us is if someone turns around to us and says, I think I can go to this appointment on my own. I don't think I need you. Like that is, for us, that's the best feeling ever. So we provide long-term support to people around a number of, we're non-prescriptive. We always are led by, the needs of the individual. But for example, like we have to kind of still quantify it. So for example, we help people with things like access to safe housing, access to mental health support, access to employment or training or, employability, education, that kind of stuff. It can be anything, it's access to mental health support, access to substance misuse support. And I think these are the social issues that are on the peripheries of exploitation. Where you say, okay, what we do. Yeah. A lot of people can say, oh, it doesn't really happen here. it's nothing to do with us, but they can see all these other social issues that are intersectional to what we do.
Yes.
And that is sometimes how exploitation can manifest. It can manifest as street living or rough sleeping. It can manifest as substance abuse. It can manifest as mental ill health. And I think these are the things that we have a duty to change people's perceptions on these, because there could be exploitation sitting behind these issues.
And we don't even see it.
No. And I think with us, the mental health one's a great example. There's a couple of really sad statistics that 98% of people who've survived exploitation, modern slavery, have at least one diagnosable mental health condition, wow. Either precondition or as a result of their exploitation, the trauma. Mm-hmm. And only 4% access support. Wow. So the work that we're doing is so needed, and we are the only dedicated service to this in Derby and the wider East Midlands, really, who support adult survivors of exploitation in this way. So.
And I think when we think about exploitation as well, and I think that's why your story really helps this even more, because we don't associate exploitation with someone who's 12 working at £2 an hour and not seeing any of that income. We think of it perhaps as people being trafficked into the UK and being utilised in that way. But I guess there are so many, and we also feel blind to that, don't we? But it is so much closer to home than perhaps people realise.
It is, yeah. I mean, you could check out, so there's a thing called the NRM, which is the National Referral Mechanism. So that's the national mechanism of support for survivors of exploitation. So we help support people refer into it with their consent. And the statistics there are like really eye-opening. There's 20,000 survivors identified last year. The largest cohort in this country are British nationals, which always surprises people to hear that, but it's true. And I think we support British nationals, but we also support people from all over the world. And the support that's required is often quite different. So for British nationals, it's quite intense. Mm-hmm. These are individuals who have probably been long known to multiple services and have complex and multiple needs. Whereas, I think the traditional model of what people associate exploitation is that people come here for work from overseas and are exploited in the process. And that does happen, for sexual exploitation, labour exploitation, domestic servitude. We support people out of those situations every day. But I think it is important, especially in the current political climate, we're seeing so much pushback on things like immigration right now, where, funding from government is being pulled and stripped because of some quite right-wing rhetoric around immigration. And I think that often gets conflated with exploitation and the work that we do. And I think it's up to us to try to re-educate people that this is something that can happen to anybody. And I think if my experience helps in that way, then I'm more than happy to use it. I'm more than happy for people to know about it, because you're right. They don't look at a middle-aged white man and think there's somebody who's probably being exploited in their life. So no. I think it's important to kind of challenge those biases and misconceptions.
It's that shame-driven bit, though, again, as well, I guess. Like you said, you didn't want to talk about it. You didn't think it was going to be a superpower. You thought it was going to be something that perhaps was going to hold you back.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And so actually, how do you get someone to go, no, don't feel shame from what you've been through?
Because there's layers. It's like an onion.
Yeah.
So some people who you're really close to, they get to know everything. So they get to know, how did that make you feel?
Yeah.
Whereas no one else gets that. They get the narrative, the synopsis, whatever, because I've made peace with that now. Whereas there was a time I used to bury that. So no one in the police for 13 years knew what I went through. So even when I was working in domestic violence and child abuse, I didn't think at the time, this is a superpower. This is something that could really help change things. I thought I need to keep my mouth shut.
You needed to hide it. In this business, in terms of your leadership style, though, this must be incredibly difficult, because you're dealing with such complex, firefighter, we were talking this morning, you've had to go and do a safeguarding incident this morning before even being able to come out. Nothing's straightforward. Nothing's kind of an easy process, is it, when you're dealing with humans and really life-altering elements? So how does this make you change as a leader?
I don't know, really. I think you'd have to ask the team.
Yeah,
because obviously Leslie was incredible, and the team have followed her. Some of the guys have been on board since day one, and I think coming in this is my first CEO role, so coming into it fresh like that, I think all I could do was just show up and be myself, and hope that no one leaves. Yeah. I think we're a team of 10, and I like waking up in cold sweats, imagining just everybody just leaving. With Leslie was one of my biggest fears, is that because there's always going to be the emotional impact of that. It's change. Change is scary. No matter how much you try to sort of support people through that. But what I'll say about the team is that they've just got the most sort of bravery and compassion, like, and how they've met this change has just been really admirable. Like they just do the work, and they do it in a way that is really hopeful and future facing and optimistic and empowering and compassionate. And it's not like they have we have a principle where we don't ask a survivor about their past. We don't ask them about their exploitation. We ask them about their future. And I love that ethos, is that we're always trying to support someone towards their preferred future, and we're doing it alongside them, not for them. And yeah, they're just an incredible team. So it feels like a bit of a weird, doesn't feel like a job sometimes. So the leadership side of things, I think I'm just really privileged to work with such great people. Whereas, yeah, the work side of things comes with all the other stuff, doesn't it? You know, you're unblocking a sink one minute, and then you're writing a £300,000 grant application the next. So you have to wear like multiple hats. Don't you?
Leadership's messy, isn't it?
Yeah. So,
do you think though, because of the pure purpose that's driven behind the business, plus the fact that that purpose is so strong for you, is that something that you feel brings that incredible team together and the culture and everything?
I hope so. I don't know. I realise, obviously, my style's going to be completely different to Leslie's. But what she did was incredible. And it's hard not to feel like sometimes I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. You know, I'm just... when I picked up the award in November, I had to say, you know, I feel like I'm taking credit for someone else's work here, or that I'm wearing someone else's shoes. And I think that kind of change arc is always going to be, you have to do it kindly. You can't just come in and go, right, I'm going to impose my way of doing things here. But like, I think it helps. I would have to ask the team, but I think it would be really sad for organisations like ours to be led by people who just saw it as a job, and could just collect their paycheck and not really be emotionally invested in it. And I think the fact that they talk about the recruitment process, and it's quite funny now for me to reflect on that, because I've been successful in coming into the role. And they're like, how are we going to find anyone who's got experience of something as niche and nuanced and, you know, complex as modern slavery in Derby? And I lived a 2-minute walk from the office, which is it just feels quite serendipitous, really. That, like, you know, it felt like it was almost meant to. Again, you're all exactly where you're meant to be, aren't you? So yeah, I heard about Rebuild through other things in the city that were going on, and other social enterprises that were going on, that supporting people, and was introduced to them that way. And then, just felt like a no-brainer, really. They're just such a good team. So.
That's amazing. And I think that really rings true as well, as in life's so short, isn't it, in terms of just going to work for a job. Yeah. Actually, when you're driven by that purpose, and I think there's some Gallup-type studies which shows that actually people are so much more content when there's a real core drive and purpose behind it. And in terms of small businesses, I think a lot of people want to make an impact. They want to be able to do something. They want to be able to support, you know, core purposes that feel important to them, so whether that's modern slavery or anything like that, but sometimes feel like it's just too big a leap, it's too difficult. Is that something that you feel speaking to kind of owner-managed businesses as well?
I think so, yeah. I think I've often felt this. I think it's not easy, but I think it's you could, if you're a, you know, FTSE 250, if you're one of those guys, like a national retailer, you can absorb the cost of a £23,000 a year membership to some slavery kind of I'm trying not to mention names here. You know, some collaborative sponsorship program where you all come together and say, right, we should all be open, transparent, and tackling exploitation together. And then you kind of set those standards and try and push them down through splashes. 23 grand is probably not that much to us there, but to an SME, to a local business, to someone who's actually wanting to put something back into our community, into Derby and Derbyshire and the East Midlands, that's a lot. So I think that's one thing we're really mindful of, is that we bring in all this experience. We're not just bringing lived experience. We're not just bringing our frontline work. We're not just bringing experience of trying to steer, you know, something the size of Asda, for example, in terms of like their ethical practices and their due diligence. We want to make that as accessible to East Midlands businesses as possible. So our pricing structures, like we're so cheap. We are, like, if you've got up to 50 employees, it's 250 quid a year. And you can get training, consultancy. We can help you write a modern slavery statement. We can help check out your supply chains and see where all the risk is, give you a continuous improvement plan, even like assess like how mature is your response currently, like against like, you know, proper frameworks. So it's I think we've got something that is really valuable to businesses and is mutually beneficial. And then they also get the added bonus of knowing that their money isn't going just to some consultant to, you know, to pay for their holiday home. It's coming into an organisation that puts it straight back into frontline work, which is, I think really powerful. And businesses do, like, we more often than not, we encounter businesses that really want to do something good and make a positive impact, and they just don't know where to start. So we just say, pick up the phone. To some it looks like offering a pathway into employment for survivors. To others it looks like sponsorship or training or consultancy. Charity of the year. You could even be like a fundraiser or an awareness raising organisation. Like there are or even skills based volunteering. Like a charity like ours, we can't afford to have people full time doing like our social media and comms and things like that. So there are all kinds of ways that people can support a good cause. Yeah. It's just asking the question and having the conversation, I think. So.
And it kind of comes back as well to your point there where just giving someone a poster doesn't kind of provide that educational element that we perhaps thought it did back then. So actually being able to go, no, let me kind of actually look at your ways of working and how you actually might be able to apply it. It's pretty powerful. Yeah,
we have like a 3-word sort of sentence that gets thrown around our sector quite a lot, which is spot the signs.
Okay.
And when people suggest this now as a campaign, I shouldn't. It's quite nihilistic and cynical of me, but I've been around long enough now to know that it's been done. And we teach people to spot these potential like indicators of exploitation. And of the vast, I've met over 400 survivors of exploitation face to face, and very rare are these indicators actually present. The best way I heard it put was we shouldn't be trying to spot abnormality in people's day-to-day. We should be trying to spot the absence of normality. We have conversations now. We can talk about, what holidays have you got planned? What are your kids like? What school do you go to? What are they into? What did you do at the weekend? And if you're someone who's being held in exploitation, that normality has been stripped away. So it's not like we should be looking for people who are malnourished or dishevelled or, nervous. We should be looking for people who don't have that sense of normal, that sense of, freedom and liberty. And, so I think awareness can take us so far, and it can get the conversation started and get people talking about something that previously they knew nothing about, but it can't really educate or challenge perceptions or get people proactive in taking actual action, tangible action that's going to prevent exploitation in the first place. So.
Before we look into kind of the takeaway from all this and like the leadership, like what role does hope play in both like life and leadership is perhaps a nice question here in terms of, I guess there was that at 17, there was the element of if I do this and have this control, I can create hope. If I'm now the CEO of Rebuild, I can create hope again. Is that something that you, when you had your newborn, your son, that element of hope again, what role has that played for you?
No, it's just a good question, actually. I joke all the time, there's amazing organisations in our sector, and invariably they always have either hope or justice or sort of care. Or they have all these names that are really synonymous with things like hope And I always joke about it that, as Rebuild, like, I think our name's great because I think it just sums us up in one word. It's amazing. I joke that we should have like the word hope in our title because like everyone else in the sector does.
Rebuilding for hope.
Rebuild for justice and hope and everything else. But I don't know, to be honest. I think there's, I don't know, I don't want it to sound too kind of like introspective or anything, but I think every single one of our survivors who comes through the doors is demonstrating that same hope. They wouldn't be here otherwise, and although, freedom and recovery isn't a linear journey, understanding that, trauma can just bubble up in the most unexpected of ways. So they might relapse every now and then. They might have a wobble. But ultimately, they're doing the hard work. They've walked through the door, and that's the first step that is going to take them towards their preferred future. And I keep using that term, but it's the best one I've got. And it's just that. It's just they obviously have a sense of autonomy and hope. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be there. And it's just getting them to believe that they're worthy of more. They're capable of more, and they do. Seeing people just grow is the most amazing thing ever. And I say that our support is non-prescriptive, and I'm a huge advocate of that approach. I don't think anyone can recover in like a 6-week window. It's like this is the referral, strict referral criteria, quick turnaround. That's what's wrong with some sectors and some setups. And I think what we do really well is that it's open-ended, it's non-prescriptive, it's always led by the needs of the individual. And I think that's really powerful because if you need 6 weeks of support, great. If you need 2 years, also great. Because we're there for people every step of the way. So until they turn around and say they don't need us anymore, which feels amazing. So.
Yeah, that's a job well done then, isn't it? And there's something that feels like that links with that growth and that doing the hard work, that steely determination. I feel like that's even the case for leaders in terms of, you have to, it's that determination, that hope maybe that we want a kind of a better business or a better way, or we want to make a bigger impact for whatever reason we set up. And I feel like there is that kind of link there again of...
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I think the world is full of people like that. There are certain people that will see a problem, complain about it and move on. There's some people that will see a problem and think, well, how can I change this? And I think I've met so many people like that, especially in our sector. Our team are incredible. They're qualified, they're passionate, they're dedicated, they're intelligent. They could earn 3 times as much in a different sector, but they choose not to. They choose to put whatever they've got to helping others, and I think there's something really special about that. So, and it just, again, it's hard to be around people like that and not feel good. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
Before we go then, and we start to wrap up, what's one line that you say to yourself when things get tough? Something that you almost would want plastered on every business owner's wall.
It's going to sound dead cheesy, but my granddad, he was probably like growing up in the environment we grew up in. This is my mum's dad. He was like this bastion of like just kindness. He was amazing. And I was just saying, like, he lived to like mid-90s, even though he smoked from the age of 12 and he was a coal miner. He's like 6'4" coal miner with like all kinds of health problems, and he was always just like the kindest man ever. But his favourite poem was "If" by Rudyard Kipling, and I've got an infographic of it on my living room wall that my partner really kindly like wrote for me because she's great at calligraphy, and it's the triumph and disaster line, because I just think there's like my granddad was a bit of a stoic, and he hardly ever complained. And he was always so positive and hopeful, and it rubbed off on the people that he met, and he always met people, he left people feeling better than what he found them, and that was just infectious. So I think, yeah, there's something quite stoic about that whole treating triumph and disaster the same that I think has always kind of stuck with me. It's like you can fall apart if something goes wrong, or you can treat it the exact same way as if it had gone right, and just, you know where you need to get to. And I'm not saying you can't call a crap day, but you just know that it is just a crap day. Tomorrow's going to be a fresh start. And I don't know, it's really cheesy, but that's always stuck with me. I'm amazed it's not a tattoo on me yet, but it probably will be one day when I'm midlife. I've had one midlife crisis. I think I'm probably due another one soon. So yeah, we'll see. But...
No, I love that. And I think actually when we've asked this question, a lot of times with business owners or leaders, they've kind of gone, where's the gift? Or where, that I always think about the Brené Brown quote where she refers to, and I'm trying to think, is it Churchill in terms of his quote of going, we've kind of got to be in the battle arena and just show up as we are. And actually, like you say, we build again tomorrow.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think, I love Brené Brown. Yeah. People keep buying me her books. So
she's brilliant, isn't she? I think it's really important for people listening today. I think we often get caught up in so much that growth, the targets, the pressure, but actually maybe it's thinking about what role purpose does play and how we can build it into our businesses. Oh,
definitely. And our communities. I think a sense of purpose can be a really powerful thing. And I think it can drive people to do things they didn't even think they were capable of.
And community is so key, isn't it? I think for everyone, from us as individuals to businesses to...
I think it's one thing I love about Derby is, and I'll keep coming back to, is just there's this amazing microcosm of people of all walks of life, all types of business and organisations and charities that just, they get it and they just want to make a space that it's a joy to live in, and that's across the board, not just for the people who have access and to opportunity, but how do we make it, equitable and accessible for everybody, and we don't leave anybody behind. And I think that's something that our city, I think, has that's quite unique and quite special, to be honest. So.
I completely agree. If there's one thing you want people to take away from this then today, what would it be?
It's just cynically, as like a charity sales, just give us money.
That's okay.
That's a call to action.
Yeah.
No, I think it's that we conversations I have with people, whether it's in a work capacity or whether it's at some dinner party or whatever. Not that I go to many dinner parties, but I'm in bed by 8 most nights. But they often look at what they do and they proper just in front of it, and I don't agree with that. It's all well and good like doing what you do, but I just work in recruitment, or I just work in a warehouse. I'm like, there's no such thing as just. Like, you are in a position where you can share your skills and knowledge and resources to genuinely make a positive impact in your local community, and that's really powerful. And all you need to do, if you don't know where to start, is just to reach out to a charity that resonates with you and just say, look, like, we genuinely don't know where to start, but we want to do more in this space, and what does that look like? And we've had some great support from businesses in a million different ways. You know, there's an upholsterer up in Wirksworth that at one time they gave us like a percentage donation of their profits for a month. It's like, that's really sweet. You know, you wouldn't necessarily synonymise what they do with what we do, but the relationship is just natural and organic, and I think we're always open to those kind of conversations.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Paul. Honestly, it's been such a powerful conversation, and I can always talk to you for hours, and I'm sure we'll carry on. And I think it's a reminder that business isn't just about performance. It's about the people. It's about the impact. It's about the purpose. It's about what we choose to stand for as a business or as an individual as well. And I think whether you're leading a large organisation or a small business, there's always an opportunity to make a difference. Paul, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And I think for anybody listening, success isn't just what you build. It's about the impact you have along the way, which is literally what you've been saying throughout. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. This has been amazing.
I always feel like I've got to clap.